Closer Look is a public affairs presentation. Views and opinions of the guests don't always reflect the views of the ministry, and some topics aren't suitable for children. Air One is committed to community. Closer Look continues with a look at local agencies, events, and issues.
One Community USA is an organization with many aspects here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. We're going to touch on a few, but more specifically on one special program. This is Closer Look, and I'm Bob Dittman with his Senior Director and Chaplain of Pathways to Hope, Bill Curry. Bill, welcome to Closer Look.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure being with you.
So, Bill, before we delve into your specific program, tell us a little bit about One Community USA, its history, and the programs available.
One Community USA was started in 2015 by Ms. Toni Brinker, who's the founder and chief executive officer. She'd been in a hotel in New York, and she heard a disturbance outside, and she started asking around why people didn't do anything, and basically somebody said, well, what about you? So she started One Community USA to make a change in society. We are composed of three principal parts. One is Shop Talk, and that's a program for the African American community where we go into the barbershops and beauty salons, and that's where people in that community meet, greet, and exchange life. And the other option is the Una Comunidad, which means literally one community. And that was the same concept as Shop Talk, except it goes into the Hispanic and Latino communities. The whole function behind this is to integrate officers into the community. The more you're known, the better you're known. You change the narrative that we've seen in the news lately of defunding police and other such things as that. But they're the communication link. And one of the small victories, even though it's a huge one, is one of the shop owners saw on the news a picture of a young lady that was being sexually trafficked. And he recognized who she was. He called a police officer and told him, hey, that's the girl I saw on TV, and she's here on the street sometimes. So the next time she showed up, so did the police, and they got her out of that trade. It's that kind of communications and that kind of trust within the community that's going to change our streets. We can talk about a lot of things. We can do all kinds of things and throw money at problems. But when it comes down to in our estimation, it has to be a human fix.
Bill, what's your background and how did you become the head of Pathways to Hope program at One Community USA?
My background is I grew up on a farm not far from here. I went to college, got a degree, went in the Army, spent 12 years in the Army, got out from that into the community, local community. Tried a few things on my own, and in the process, ended up getting hired by a defense contractor. The funny thing is, in high school and college, I hated English. I saw no need for it, but yet for 29 years, I was a technical writer and a maintenance engineer, and that's all I did was English and write. In the process of that, I got drug into prison by a friend of mine, and I went only because he kept nagging me. So one day in a South Texas prison, I sat there, and when God calls your name and calls your number, you know you got to go into the game, because an inmate told me things that only God would know. There was no way that this guy I had ever met knew anything, but yet he knew what was going on in my life. That was 20 years ago. I've been a volunteer for 20 years. Of that, 7 years as a assistant chaplain in a nearby prison. The last 4 or 5 of these years has been working specifically with veterans in the prisons. The interesting fact is that only 1% of the American population has served in the military, yet 10% of our prison population is veterans. When I heard those numbers, my chaplain and I just kind of looked at each other and said, we got to do something. So we started a program called Veterans Helping Veterans in the Prison, and it's just an attempt to get vets together again as brothers, but also have programs that prepare them to get out on the outside, to be successful when they get out, and to overcome their backgrounds. Some of these guys have done bad things, some really bad things, but we sit there and think we're still brothers. We still serve together. We still have an oath of office that we took to support and defend. So we're going to do that, and we're going to do that through helping you. We have the acronym for the Pathways to Hope stands for Helping Offenders Pursue Excellence. And each year, a counselor would come in and work with my vets, and every year she had a word for the year. What was your word? And my word for 3 years was always hope, because hope is what I needed. And if I couldn't give hope to somebody else, then I was basically recycling air for no particular reason, because I wasn't doing anything good with it. So I sat there and retired from my paying job. I went into retirement, still working at the prison, volunteering as a police chaplain in the local police department. And about 5 months ago, a very nice lady gave me a call and said, we need to talk. And that lady was Miss Tony Brinker, who is the CEO of One CommunityUSA. We got together. It was a match made. She explained what she wanted me to do. We have a program that works with men currently that are coming out of the county jail. With COVID and all the ramifications of that, the county jails are shut down. So we can't get inside right now to do what we wanted to do, which was a 40-hour pre-vocational training session, in which we sit there and give guys in the county jail the same kind of tools that I was giving guys in prison to get them ready to come out, reintegrate in society successfully. In 20 years in prison, I've seen a lot of programs that are good. They teach all kinds of good and necessary information, tasks, whatever. But the one thing that was lacking is when you get out, these guys are coming into a society that has kept on moving while they were locked down. So what we try to do is give them hope by bringing them outside, putting them into an 18-month training course, which we sit there and we partner with a program called Bridges to Life. We alternate the first 6 months with them, and then the last year is just us. And we, again, teach all life success skills and survival skills. But the most important thing that differentiates us is we have mentoring program. And that is when we tag a offender with a mentor. We want to primarily focus on the vets, so we find a vet mentor to go with a vet offender. The other thing is what we do is we try to get law enforcement involved. And so far we've had good success with people committing to be mentors, so that the guy that gets arrested looks out there and has a mentor. And somewhere down the line, he finds out that, oh, by the way, this guy's a cop. And that helps change the narrative, because suddenly that's not the evil man that he see portrayed on TV and radio. It's a real human being that, in this case, cares very much about him. So that's what the whole focus of Pathway to Hope is about. And the synergy of it is we can help guys that are coming out get linked up with the Una Comunidad and Shop Talk, and they can help us find opportunities in the communities for these men to reintegrate.
Now, you're only helping men, right? Not women?
Correct. Right now, it's just men.
Okay. What do you like most about what you're doing?
It blesses me beyond belief when you see guys change their life. One of the guys in prison told me one time, he said, you keep talking about hope and you've given me hope. He says, now I feel like I'm a human being again. I feel like I'm a somebody and not just a number and not just one of those people. I talked to a volunteer in West Texas one time on a Bill Glass weekend. And he told me, he said that people in his church told him that, why do you waste your time with those convicts? And he says, well, the Bible I read says something to the effect of, the homeless, the orphans, the sick, the widows. Oh, and by the way, those in prison too. So when I see a guy change his life, his trajectory changes, he pulls out of a power dive and moves into a bright future, it gets me fired up and I enjoy it. And if there's times that I get down about, just there's so much going on, somebody always comes along and says, hey, I really appreciate what you did. And it's things like that. Sometimes you get a little short letter saying, the impact that the program had. I'm good for another 100,000 miles after that.
Okay. Helping those who may have made some bad choices in life, winding up behind bars, but need a little help integrating into society. That's the topic tonight on Closer Look. And we're talking with Bill Curry, the Senior Director and Chaplain of Pathways to Hope at One CommunityUSA. I'm Bob Dittman. Bill, you emphasize helping veterans in your program. Why is that?
Well, I'm a veteran. I served in the Army, and I enjoyed it. In the process, I picked up a wife, 2 kids, and a dog. But I got to live my life in other countries, Korea, Germany. I got to travel through Europe. It gave me the opportunity to see what the rest of the world is like. But also, it was a brotherhood. It was a fellowship of like-minded guys. And it was all about service and self. I mean, we sit there and help others along with us, because as a team, a platoon, or a company, if you're successful, then you win. However, weak links in that will drag everybody else down. So it's just a thing about patriotism, and that's what part of our group here is about. It's about patriotism. It's about America. One team, one community, and making it all together.
Now, do you run into vets who may have PTSD? And if so, how does that contribute to issues reintegrating into society after being in prison?
Well, that's a good question, because as a vet, you do not come back from the military unchanged. You change because you have to change with different situations, different environments. And unfortunately for many, they've seen some terrible, horrible things. They've gone to some places that they never dreamed of going. They've seen things that they never dreamed of seeing. and that's burned into their memory. Now, then, if you take that as a fact, and then you sit there and say that, okay, you're a vet and you've got issues, now you're a vet that's in prison. Prison is like the military in a way that you don't come out of prison the same way you went in, and you're taught a whole different set of values, a different way of living. So now you've compounded the PTSD issues. I was checked for PTSD when I was asked by a counselor if I'd ever been evaluated. I said, I've never been in combat. And she said, well, it doesn't matter if you've been in combat. I asked you about PTSD. And I said, why would you think that I have PTSD? She says, well, why do you email me at 2 o'clock in the morning? I said, well, I'm working. Why are you working at 2 o'clock in the morning? Well, we got to get things done. And that's just a small example of guys that have much worse experiences than what I ever had. And you're having to deal with things mentally. The other part of being a guy in the military is you don't really admit you've got a problem, because if you admit a problem, you admit weakness. And especially in prison, you can't be weak. So many people self-medicate with drugs, alcohol, or anything else that satiates what their anxieties are, just, what they're not seeing in life. Life doesn't make any kind of sense. And they need help. And unfortunately, the system, the civilian system with insurance and things like that, oftentimes says, well, let's give you 12 weeks and that should be enough. And unfortunately, I know one of the vets I worked with in prison was in a aftercare facility, and he just declared himself fixed because he said he was fixed, and he ended up ODing. It's a real world, real problem, and these guys and gals need to help understanding how to deal with it, that it's okay to say I'm not okay.
One of the issues with the prison system, and you mentioned this to me in our pre-talk, is that they often give the person a small amount of money when leaving jail and then leave them to their own wiles. Now, this doesn't really help, does it?
No. If the way it works in Texas, if you've done all your time and you've served it all, then when you get out, they give you $100, and you have to walk down the street. There's a place down there you can sit there and cash your check, and I mean it's a readily available place. The other thing is, if you're on parole, they give you $50, and then you get the next $50 when you see your parole officer. Well, when these guys walk down the street to cash their check, there's everything in the world waiting on them down there they can buy. And in any event, even if they're frugal, $100 is not going to get you anywhere. If you get the 150, sure not. So you need to have a place to live. You need to have a place to work. You need to have, some sense of order in your life. Some guys don't have any family or been rejected by their family. So if you have no family, then if you have any so-called friends, you'll go back to them, and then you'll probably end up doing the same stuff you used to do. And I always give the example of a guy was getting out. He was going to go back to his buddies. And I said, did they ever check on you when you were in prison? No. They ever write you? No. They ever put any money in your books? No. But yet he was going to go back to the same guys that had forgotten about him for all these years, because that's all he had to go back to. Some of these guys are desperate. They're destitute. They don't have a place to go. They don't have anything to do. They don't know anybody. So they need somebody to come alongside them and say, hey, stiff upper lip, put a smile on your face. We're going to get through this together.
On closer look, we have Senior Director and Chaplain of Pathways to Hope, Bill Curry, and he works with One CommunityUSA as well. I'm Bob Dittman. Bill, let's delve into your program a little deeper. When do you first initiate contact?
Right now, our program was set up, and I said as a result of COVID, it's been changed. It was really set up where we would go into the county jail, working with the Tarrant County services officer over there, and we identify guys that are coming out, and then we send them applications, give them information. Those that want to join would come into a cohort, go through the 40-hour training program in the jail, and then come out and enter our free world program. Since that has been stymied, I guess you say, we're in the process right now of developing correspondence courses that we can ship into the jail to these guys that are interested. That way they've got something to work on, and they're not just wasting their time there. The other alternative is we're looking at going into Texas Department of Corrections, or the TDC prison system, and identifying inmates that are coming back to the Fort Worth area and contacting them through TDC and sending them applications and determining those that would want it. So then once they get out, they would come back here. We can meet them at the station, you might say, and then help them get oriented and then enter them into one of our programs.
So let's talk about the programs. What is your curriculum and how does it help?
Basically, what the curriculum does, we sit there and teach them job readiness and also family and community readiness. What we do for the job is we present them means of finding jobs, how you look for a job, where you look for a job. Oftentimes, especially the veterans, they don't understand how to get a job. You sit there and you say, well, what have you done? Well, I've just been a grunt, an infantryman. Well, what did you do? I don't know. I mean, I just did what I was told to do. So we have to sit there and change their focus and change their understanding, saying, okay, you were an infantryman, so did you have people under you? Yes. Oh, okay, so you supervised people. Yes, I did. Okay. And you're responsible for those people in terms of training and preparing them. Yep. Okay, so now you supervised and you trained them. And then people that had higher positions, let's say maybe a platoon sergeant, platoon leader, something like that. Okay, so were you responsible for a budget of some sort? Well, yeah, we were allocated funds to get our equipment. Okay, so now you've managed finances, you've done budget. And a lot of it is refocusing their thinking from military into the civilian world, so they can see where they can impact something. They can get a job because they have the skills, they have the abilities. Employers are willing to hire veterans because, one, there's a tax break. We turn their thinking around and say, okay, here's what it looks like in the civilian world, and let them understand how to do that. We also talk to them that, okay, once you've got your resume, here's where you put a cover letter on it, here's how you send it. Some people say, well, I don't need a resume. I'm just an hourly worker. Okay, well, you need to understand the same information that goes into a resume for an hourly worker, because you're going to have to fill out applications. Oh, and by the way, those applications are done online. So we help them with understanding, how to fill out applications online. And believe it or not, some don't even know how to really operate a computer other than the on-off button. So we sit there and teach them, okay, if you can fill one application out in, say, 5 minutes, okay, how many can you do in an hour, as opposed to knocking on doors and having to write stuff down? But also, if you have the information available, you can do it quicker and more efficiently. So we're trying to teach them how to work smarter, not necessarily harder.
And you've also been able to come across employers who are willing to hire them, haven't you?
Yes, sir. There's a quite lengthy list of employers that are willing to hire ex-felons. Now, obviously, let's say that your crime was embezzlement, you're not going to get a job at the finance office or somewhere, but they're willing to help. They're willing to pay or get the tax benefit. And some people just think, there's no hope out there. Well, there is. And that's what we want to give them is hope, because we want to tell them, here's some employers that will give you a look. And there's a bill that was enacted, I think, back in the Obama administration, where a bunch of employers signed up to say, okay, we're not going to ask you about your criminal record when you first apply. We'll give you the first interview. And at that point, we can ask you about it. And I always tell guys is you've got to be able to answer the question. You got to answer the mail as to where were you for the last 5 years, let's say. And don't say something crazy like, well, I work for the state of Texas. No, you didn't. But what happens is if this guy gets in front of an employer and he presents himself well and he's got the skills and abilities that the guy's looking for, then you sit there and you've got a positive mindset. At that point, if he says, well, tell me about where you've been. Well, I've been locked up. I did a crime. I paid my time, and I'm out here in the world. That's his chance to sell himself on who he is and how he's overcome his past. At least that way, he gets his foot in the door for an interview as opposed to getting shut down right off the bat. So that's a good thing for them that they need to really understand and appreciate.
I'm Bob Dittman, and on Closer Look, we're talking about those who are coming off a prison sentence, become productive and thriving members of society. Our guest is Bill Curry, the Senior Director and Chaplain of Pathways to Hope. Now, I know this is kind of a new program, at least for One CommunityUSA, but what have been the results so far?
Well, the results so far is we're getting a lot of support. We're still in the organizational phase of getting our first cohorts down the road, but even in the process, we're still working with individuals that come to us and say they really need help. The results that I've had in prison is, and I expect exactly the same thing here because this is a much better program with the mentoring process. But guys just say, I didn't have any hope and you gave me hope. I didn't think I could be anything on the outside, but I'm somebody and I'm happy. I'm excited. That's the potential. Any good program that cares about the people, that invests in the people, then monkey is on the individual's back to make sure that he avails himself to all the possible support he can get. I don't expect anything different here, either with guys coming out of the state or guys coming out of the county jail.
Now, are you in need of volunteers?
Oh, absolutely. We do training here in the Fort Worth area on the third Saturday of each month at a facility in Southwest Fort Worth called LVT Rise on Calamont Avenue. We do it the third Saturday. It goes from 9 to 11. And basically what I do is I teach guys, what it's like to be in prison, what it's like to be a mentor, how to be a successful mentor, but also help them to understand where this individual has been. He's been in prison. Here's what he's experienced. Here's the things he may be thinking. Here's things that he will have emotions about. If he's a vet, we try to match a vet up with him so he understands what it's like to have the PTSD, the anxiety, to live in a civilian world with still a military mindset. But yeah, the mentor, that's the key. That's the key linchpin to this whole thing. You can teach all kinds of programs and give all kinds of information, but when you know somebody you might say is going to check your homework, then you're going to be a little bit more serious about it. But he can help you see the benefits of what you can be, the potential that you have that you think maybe you don't have because you have made bad mistakes. I can tell you that there's things I did when I was a young kid that if I did them today, I'd probably end up in jail. The times would change, but the thing is, it's like, we all still need help. And the mentor is that critical thing in the whole process. Or as Ms. Brinker says, he is key critical to all that we do.
So if somebody wants to be a volunteer, how do they contact you?
They can contact me at onecommunityusa.org. That's our website. Or they can call me directly, 972-951-3122. And I can give them the information. Basically, what we do is we get a volunteer. We're going to vet them. They need to fill out an application. We'll do the training. Then we'll also do a background check just to make sure that there's not something in their background that's going to preclude them from being an effective mentor. If you've got a heart to change somebody's life, to make a difference in society, change the narrative, as people say, then mentoring is what you can do for us that will make all that happen.
Bill, I think we could spend at least another hour talking about your programs and what you're doing, but we do need to wrap it up. Is there anything you'd like to add before we do so?
The thing is, we've got a lot of support for this. Sheriff Wayburn in Tarrant County, after Ms. Bricker visited me about 20 minutes, he said, I want it. We're going to do this. For all our programs, they've been presented on Daystar. We're endorsed by most all of the law enforcement associations, local NAACP chapter, Governor Abbott. So we've got a lot of people on the team that are behind us that are pushing. We just sit there and want to make a difference in our community and our world because, when it comes time to make real change, it's not easy. It's not always fun and happy. And once all the hoorah is passed and people have forgotten about something that happened, there's still people living that haven't gotten any real help. It's kind of like the hurricane. Once all the news people leave and all the hoorah is gone, there's people still sitting around there with shattered homes, houses, and lives. And that's where the volunteers that stay there make the big impact. So, once somebody comes home and all the excitement's over, or once all the PR about an event is passed, we're still going to be there doing what we do, changing lives and changing communities, because we want to change a man so he can change his house and his family, and he can change his community. And that's going to make all of us a lot better.
Well, Bill, it sounds like you got a great program going there. And thanks for being our guest on Closer Look.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thanks to Bill Curry, Senior Director and Chaplain of Pathways to Hope with One Community USA. If you'd like to know more about their services, again, the website is onecommunityusa.org, or you can email us at closerlook@air1.com. That's closerlook@air1.com. For Closer Look, I'm Bob Dittman.
This has been Air One Closer Look. Find us online at air1.com.